Hey guys, so you have to bear with me. This is my first time using this screencasting stuff, so I don't know if I'm going to look in the right places. I don't really know what I'm doing, so let's just see how it goes though. I want to do a few of these for you so that we can move forward in class, focusing on certain aspects of the chapters instead of all of them. So I am going to finish up Chapter 8 via the screencast. The last thing we were talking about, we talked about emotions in the brain. The amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, all of this growing. We have development of the corpus callosum. Things are getting, the brain is lateralizing, and remember, we're in our 2 to 6 year olds, because I should have said that. So one of the last things that we were talking about in Chapter 8 is this whole injuries and abuse. And I think I ended up our last discussion with the idea that accidents and injuries are the leading cause of death in this age group because of 2 reasons. One, these little ones can at times be fearless and not cautious. They are excited about the things they can do. They think they can fly, which we'll talk about in Chapter 9 with Piaget's magical thinking. They haven't had affordances for as many things that would cause them to be cautious. So, and their brain, they don't have the prefrontal cortex inhibiting the limbic system as much, so they can be very fearless. We talk about this again in adolescence. But right now, they're also growing their little muscles, but they don't have as quick a reflexes. The development of that corpus callosum helps the reflexes to be faster, but they're still not that coordinated. Think about 3-year-olds. No, they're not that coordinated. 6-year-olds are not that coordinated. They're growing in these aspects, in these areas. So as you see here in this, 2 to 6-year-olds in the U.S., 4 times more children die in accidents than of cancer, which is the second most common cause of death. So what we look at these days, they've changed it to injury control and harm reduction. They don't really call them accidents as much because they're trying to find ways to say we can prevent these things. So we look at prevention. Now we're also, when we talk about maltreatment, which we did a little bit with neglect already, both maltreatment and injuries have these 3 levels of prevention that are the same. They're named the same, and they really basically look the same. So you want to get these clear. There's primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention, say in accidents, is going to be more of a global action in terms of, for example, what is one of the leading places that accidents can happen for where there's a lot of children, right? So we have things like car seats. We have sort of laws in place to try to protect children from accidents. As you can see here, change overall background conditions. So we have speed limits, and we have speed bumps, and we have car seats, and things that try to reduce vehicular accidents in general, right? So we have primary prevention, stop signs and stoplights, and all of these things that try to lessen the possibility. And then, so primary prevention is like global. It's the big kind of behind the scenes pictures where we're trying to create safe environments in general and things that we put into place, laws and so forth. Secondary prevention is going to look at high-risk situations for children. So where do these things happen mostly for children? Let's say schools, around schools. So we have school zones, we have crossing guards, we have specific things within high-risk areas that try to focus even more precautions in those areas, so installing traffic lights at dangerous intersections, and then we figure out, okay, where do we really need these things? And so maybe like also parking lots, things where accidents might occur more easily. So primary, global, secondary, we're coming in even farther to very specific situations where these things might happen more often, construction zone, wherever it is. So tertiary prevention then is actually not a prevention for the accident as much as a reaction, a response to something that has already happened. So after there has been an adverse event, an injury, an accident, what do we have in place? What systems do we have in place to take care of those things so that like an accident doesn't lead to death, that it doesn't get worse. So we reduce the harm right here. We reduce the harm or prevent disability in it. So, you know, ambulance and laws around those, and response times, and 911, and things that help us to get things in place. So primary, global; secondary, moving into high-risk situations; tertiary, strategies in place after something has already happened. Okay? So child maltreatment, so those are accidents, but these same levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary, and how they work are going to be the same for maltreatment prevention. So when we look at maltreatment, intentional harm to or avoidable endangerment of anyone under 18. So this can include both abuse and neglect. And we watched the science of neglect. We watched that video. We talked about that. Abuse can be physical, emotional, or sexual. So we don't, in terms of how often this is happening in our society, it's really hard to know because, well, you know, one thing is that reported maltreatment is going to be a lot less than actual maltreatment. Why? Because people involved aren't going to report it. People around them don't always report it. People are afraid to get involved. The people involved in it, children certainly don't want to report it. They've maybe been threatened if they report it, so they feel like they need to be really careful, and then the people around them don't want to get involved and then cause further problems or cause themselves any harm. So reported maltreatment is less than actual maltreatment. But we still have up to 3.5 million a year in the U.S., so to think that it's actually a lot more than that. And then substantiated is going to be less because they have to be able to show it. It's been investigated and verified. So even if it's been reported, that doesn't mean once they've had, either time has passed, people change their stories, or the actual proof isn't available when they go to try to substantiate and verify that these things have happened. 1 in 80 children in the U.S. That's a lot. That's a lot. So then we look at warning signs. You know, there's an obligation to report among people who work with children directly, and so it's good to know warning signs. Delayed development, slow physical growth, as well as mental cognitive growth. We see PTSD in children, which is going to look a lot like it does in adults in some situations, meaning there's a hypervigilance, very strong startle reflex. Children now may either act out or become withdrawn. So PTSD could look either way kind of in children. Fantasy play, repeated injuries so that we see that they're getting hurt, but they have physical complaints. And then this hypervigilance is actually, you know, a lot like this post-traumatic stress. Absences, they're not around, they don't really want to go home, they're afraid of their caregivers. So when we see these things, now here's the thing with children. If we see something concerning in a child, or a lot of times, you know, if we're in a situation with a child and either they're acting out or they're difficult, or, you know, they look bored, or they're you know, we can put a lot of stories around what might be causing that, and then not necessarily look deeper at that situation or think about, again, all the complexities. You know, is the child getting food at home that then can affect how they behave? Are they getting to sleep at night? Are they sleeping well? Do they have a situation at home where they can sleep? And if, you know, they're not, that can affect their behavior and their mood. Are they, you know, are they modeling behaviors they see at home? So a lot of times it's just about a curiosity, and, you know, wherever we are, there's always usually there's a chain of command in these kinds of things, but at least having the curiosity to wonder and not go to one story about what might be causing, you know, that every child that acts out doesn't have ADHD, or that, you know, that we're a big tapestry, and that there's a lot of potential reasons for why a child may act the way they do. So sometimes it's just the curiosity, the empathy and the care to be curious, to look into that. There are consequences, of course, and even, neglect being some of the worst because of there's cognitive and emotional development impairment, as well as for, both neglected and abused children. Severely maltreated children suffer in all ways. They can create models, of course, whether they're neglected. Sometimes it's that avoidant model. If they're abused, it can be that hypervigilant, not trusting model. So they can create these working models of not trusting people, being fearful, or seeing others as aggressive. So it can create in them a sense of self that then creates coping mechanisms of the way they treat the world in order to protect themselves a lot of the time. The earlier it starts, the longer it continues, the worse their peer relationships, because of course they're trying to hide these things. They don't want people to know. They're creating these coping mechanisms to make them feel safe. So the earlier that we can get involved, somebody can get involved to kind of try to work with these children and get them into safe environments, the better, of course. So we look at these 3 levels of prevention again: and abuse and maltreatment. Primary prevention, any measure in our society that reduces financial stress, family isolation, unwanted parenthood, anything like this that we have set up in our society, in our communities, and at a global level to help people that might lead to these types of problems. Education, opportunities for work. We know that unemployment, we know that young parenting, single parenting, all of these things can lead to stress, and stress can lead to harsher parenting. So secondary prevention, so when we see high risk families, and however that might be defined in terms of parents who are maybe single parents with high stress, lots of jobs, lots of kids really trying to juggle a lot of things, how can we help them? How can we put high quality daycare, social workers, how can we build resources for these people that are specifically high risk? And then this tertiary, when it has already happened, unfortunately, what is in place? So this permanency planning, we know that it's better for children to be in a permanent, stable environment than to be moving around, going here and there. Certainly not good for these young children when they need to create some type of stability within themselves and in their lives. So what can that look like? It can look like foster care, good foster care, kinship care. So that's where another family member takes them in, and then of course adoption. So remember, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary. Global to high risk to what do we do when something has already happened, and create a situation that will be better for them, to alleviate trauma. How do we deal with the trauma once it has happened, and get them into a stable environment? All right, so those are the things left in Chapter 8 that I want you to know. So hopefully you will take the opportunity to watch this if you want. I hope you will. And I'll see you later.